Good morning, YouTube. It's very early. A couple conversations recently that I've had with friends in the XJW community has got me thinking on some issues that I think are important for all of us, former Jehovah's Witnesses, to think about. Now, even though we have realized that the Watchtower is not the one true religion, whether you believe in such a thing or not, which I don't, some of us have kept certain nuances of Jehovah's Witnessness, whether consciously or unconsciously, I don't know. I've been kind of disturbed to discover some of this in myself after almost 20 years on the outside, after being pretty sure I was done with dealing with this stuff. No, I'm not. I've noticed it in some of my friends and relatives who were also ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've noticed how it affects us and our ability to function in the real world. Now, sometimes it's a minor thing, like still referring to that religion as the truth. And sometimes it's more ingrained and not so minor at all. But before I can go too far into that, I have to do some definition so that those of you who maybe aren't Jehovah's Witnesses or former witnesses know what the hell we're talking about, right? So, when I was a Jehovah's Witness, there was this huge emphasis on speaking the pure language, or the heavily coded language common to Jehovah's Witnesses. So you needed to know the meaning below the surface of what was being said so that you could interpret what you heard at the meetings, right? For example, witnesses have gone on the record as saying that they don't practice shunning. We know they do. But for witnesses well versed in the pure language, they feel like they can say this with absolutely no irony because they don't call it shunning. They call it disfellowshipping. It's the same thing. And they firmly believe that it's 100% the fault of the disfellowshipped person who has actively chosen to be ostracized. Please. But this is how the pure language works, right? It's inherently deceptive. And it's not cool. Now, there are plenty of lists out there, and some of them are incredibly hilarious, of frequently used Jehovah's Witness words and phrases. But what's the result of having learned this language? Or worse, having only learned this language if you were born in like I was? Well, you don't really know how to communicate like a normal person. See, often you don't realize it, but people may misunderstand your meaning because they don't know the alternate definitions to things that you've been taught, and vice versa. Honestly, sometimes for me, it was like I came from another planet altogether. It took me years before worldly people, that is normal people, started making sense to me. Another extremely creepy thing that I remember from being raised Jehovah's Witness was the constant exhortation to strip off the old personality and put on the new personality. As if you could just choose one day to be a completely different person. They used a scripture at Colossians 3:9 to create a truly warped series of articles and talks that basically implied that everyone who became a Jehovah's Witness was previously some sort of criminal, or at the very least they were addicted to porn or masturbation or violence or something. In other words, they were dangerous, dirty, bad people who were miraculously cleansed by their association with the Jehovah's Witnesses to the point that they completely discarded their entire personality and picked up a new one at the Kingdom Hall like you might pick up a new shirt at the Gap. This always creeped me out, like always, even when I was a true believer, because there's so much wrong with the whole concept. See, when you're taught and you believe that everything about your real personality, who you are, is bad, sinful, whatever, it sets you up for some big problems later because you cannot actually cease being you, no matter what you do. No matter how hard you try, your core personality is what it is. You can change your behavior, no doubt, and some of us should. But that's not exactly what they told us, is it? They didn't ever say change your behavior. They said change who you are. But if you were indoctrinated by the witnesses, either as a born-in or as someone who came in via Bible study, which was actually a Watchtower publication study, if we're being honest here, There are two things that you almost always did. You spoke the pure language, and you internalized certain ideas about yourself and your place in the world. Now, these things are things that we must overcome in order to move on with our lives, which is something that all of us want to do. The first thing is our ideas about romantic relationships. Now, both men and women coming out of the Watchtower have some pretty jacked up ideas about how relationships are supposed to work. So many crazy myths that exist in the regular world, but are magnified and made stronger and worse under the Jehovah's Witness lens. Examples? Women are weaker vessels. A woman can't make the first move. A man should pay for everything. Men should be providers. Women who are sexually adventurous are infleculate sluts. Women are trying to trap a man. A man will stay with you if you are totally submissive and dependent. The man is the head of the house and is in charge of the relationship. I could go on. These are almost all outdated tropes, but I'll bet at least some of them are still rattling around in your head unless you've consciously rooted them out. And that is something that you should do because none of those things are true. None of them. Every relationship is different. Going along with that is examining our ideas about friendship. Now, I've done a whole video on friendship before, and it's a loaded topic for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because it's so hard for us. It's a huge problem for us. We don't know how to really be a good friend because we never learned. We were not allowed to do this as Jehovah's Witnesses because everything was conditional based on our performance in the field service or at the Kingdom Hall. And the candidate pool for dating or friendship was typically so very small, and so much of our so-called social lives was already mapped out for us in excruciating detail by the organization. We truly don't know how to behave sometimes. We are so used to that condescending, superior attitude that we had as Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, we're the chosen ones and we are better than everyone else. Look at our unity and our humility. That attitude actually pushes people away in the real world. And some of us don't even realize we're doing it. It took me a really long time to pinpoint this in my own life. Look, we don't have to be right all the time. We don't have to be constantly trying to change somebody's mind about something. And if we hang out with someone a few times and we really don't want to hang out again, guess what? We don't have to. There have been plenty of times when I tried to be friends with people who just weren't compatible. It didn't click. There have been just as many times that I've really wanted to be friends with people who just didn't feel the same way. And that's normal. Now, another thing that we may have unconsciously carried out of the Watchtower with us is our ideas about others. And I say others, not necessarily meaning all other people. I mean other races, cultures, sexual orientation. Yeah. Try to consciously get to know some people who are different from you in every way and who haven't been force-fed the same Kool-Aid you have. I mean, have we all really looked at our unconscious biases? Because we all have them. We need to acknowledge that such a thing exists and look hard at it and see what kind of attitudes we've carried out with us. The next thing is language, which we've touched on a little bit already, but this one is so big. We have to make a real effort to learn and understand the real definition behind loaded words like apostate and loyal and integrity. You have to unlearn the pure language so that you can make yourself understood and so that you can understand others. And for the love of all that is holy, y'all, do not go around calling people brother and sister if they are not related to you. Trust me on that. I wouldn't call myself sister in some of my videos if my last name weren't Pfister, but that's too hilarious to pass up. I just think it's funny. But I can't emphasize this enough. Outside of the church context, it's just weird, and it's a little off-putting. If you're interested in someone romantically, especially, the worst thing that you can do is slip up and call him brother. Yuck. And if you happen to be talking to a fellow ex-Jehovah's Witness, keep in mind that some of this language can be a trigger. If they suffer from PTSD, especially, you just can't lapse into dubspeak, and it's easy to do. At the very least, try to be conscious of how much you use those pure language words and phrases in normal conversation. And think about where you could be misunderstood unintentionally. So, the next issue is moral compass. We all need to calibrate our moral compass and learn how to read it, right? Because we know that witnesses hold forth quite a bit about morality, but when it comes down to it, their ethics are really kind of screwed. On the moral side of the equation, according to the Jehovah's Witnesses, you have the Bible, of course, the New World Translation, and the society, our Christian brotherhood, etc. On the immoral side, you have sex. In the real world, this isn't how any of this works. See, we were taught to assume that anyone who is not a Jehovah's Witness is immoral and that literally anything goes for worldly people. And that is absolutely not true. So, for example, a while back I did a video about a friend from my old life who is still a witness, I think in name only, but who's been contacting me secretly for a while now. And this person is in an extramarital relationship with another married person, but they still don't consider for an instant that I might have a problem with this. I mean, it's none of my business, but I do have a problem with it. I think it's bad behavior. I think it's breaking a promise. But in this person's mind, I'm worldly, so I should be fine with it, right? Look, it's hard, and it takes a long time to realize that, but we do not come out of the watchtower with the great morals that we think we have. Building a good, solid ethical base takes time, and it takes work, especially when we believe things like it's okay to lie to protect the reputation of your religion, or if a person's disfellowshipped, then it's definitely their fault, or whatever happens, we'll leave it in Jehovah's hands and he'll work it out. I've also talked before about learning to listen to your inner voice, your instinct. You know, the one that the witnesses told us we should erase, or if you were born in, they never allowed you to develop it in the first place. This is so important because I know too many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who will make what they know to be a bad decision. But as long as they can find one person who agrees with them to validate their reasoning, they'll do whatever it is, even though they know it's not a good choice deep down. Very dangerous. So, on to the next topic. Let's talk about boundaries, shall we? Jehovah's Witnesses don't have any, right? We were used to barging into other people's houses, into each other's business with no reservations whatsoever. We were used to having our own space invaded regularly, and we were served up relentless commentary on our appearance, our performance and service, our relationships, our social lives, everything. Literally everything. We have to learn what boundaries are, how to set them for ourselves, and how to respect the boundaries of others. When someone says no to you, it's a boundary. It's not a challenge. You need to respect it. When somebody says no to you, you need to listen, whether you agree with it or not. This is especially important when you're trying to develop relationships and friendships outside and completely separate from the Jehovah's Witness or ex-Jehovah's Witness community. It's also important to understand that you can set boundaries and you do not have to tolerate people who ignore or try to push past them. And what I'm about to say really ties back to the first and second points too, about relationships and friendships. You don't have to be nice to everybody. You don't have to let everybody in. My therapist once told me that boundaries are like a fence that you build around your own yard, right? A person doesn't get to come waltzing into your front yard simply because they know how to open a gate. Former Jehovah's Witnesses and regular people alike will often try to make you responsible for their problems, whether consciously or unconsciously. Do not let this happen. And it's hard because we weren't taught how to do this as Jehovah's Witnesses. But remember, no is a complete sentence. You can't help everybody. I can't help everybody. And if you try, you're going to get hurt. Trust me on this. Sometimes no's the right answer. Okay, final point. Y'all, stop beating yourself up. Stop beating yourselves up. You are worthy. You are good enough. There is nothing wrong with having self-esteem. There is nothing wrong with being proud of yourself for your accomplishments. Even if your accomplishment is getting out of bed today. I'm pretty proud of that myself right now. And go look in a mirror, for real. There is something beautiful about every single person. I'm serious. And guess what? You can enhance that by taking care of yourself and being healthy. You don't have to be a supermodel. I mean, if you are, more power to you, but most of us aren't, right? We are all worthy of love, all of us. And your people are out there, whether you found them yet or not. Your friends, your family, the love of your life. They might look different than you expect them to. They might be older or younger. They might be from another country or culture. They might be a different color. They might be gay. They might be transgender. Your potential best friend could be right around the corner from you right now. And you just have to be open to the possibilities and not so anxious about it. Yeah, I know. It's easier said than done.